This is Money Motivation and Mike, and I am your host, Michael Wainwright. In charge of the controls, as always, audio engineer Jason Wright. And hello to you, world. This is the show that will change your life. You can contact us at info@mx3.vip and find all our content at mx3.vip or on our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@mx3podcast. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to get notified of all of our new content, which comes out every Monday morning around 9 o'clock. Big episode here today, Jason. For the first time in the history of the world, the Texas Rangers are the world champions of the 2023 World Series, and we're going to finish up our episodes on the Texas Rangers here over the next few minutes. But before we get into that, a couple of different things. Number one, our viewing audience is growing and growing on a daily basis. Just in the last 7 days, we're up 71% viewers over the previous 7 days. And over the last 28 days, our viewers are up 78% over the previous 28 days. 1,101 downloads in the last 48 hours and right at 200 hours of watch time in the last 28 days. Thank you once again. The information that we continue to put out, you continue to watch and listen to on our YouTube and podcast shows. Thank you very much for that. And I'm going to make some comments at the end before we finish up on our Texas Ranger episode. And I know this is skipping around, but there was a Republican debate last night, Jason. And you know what? Let's just talk about that for a second before I get into Texas Rangers, because I just want to make one quick comment. And you know, other than Donald Trump, they're down to 5 candidates. Mike Pence pulling out here a couple of weeks ago, which really I thought would go to the end and be the opposition for Donald Trump in the final 2. But Pence has pulled out, and you're down to 5. And what was funny last night on a 3-hour episode of the Republican debate was the first question that was asked to the 5 candidates without former President Donald Trump in attendance was, how could you basically be a better president, a better leader than who and what is Donald Trump? First question that was asked to all 5 people. I thought that was funny that the man who's not even at the Republican debate, the man who is not the current sitting president, is the first question, the first topic for the other 5 candidates. Funny stuff, if you ask me. Now, let's talk about where we are right now as a nation. And you think about this. Our current sitting President Joe Biden, impeachment inquiries continuing to go on. And latest issue of son and now brother, I believe, being subpoenaed to come in and answer questions. That is going to be our, more than likely, Democratic nominee and candidate here in the election 2024 days. And then we get back to Donald Trump, who has not attended a debate and frankly has good reason not to. He says, everybody knows everything about me. Why would I show up and do what it is you want me to do, which is answer questions and cut me off halfway through the sentence? I understand that. But here we are with Donald Trump once again, and he's going through investigation, whether it's whether you approve of it or not, for falsifying financial statements back in 2021 to get additional funds or to get funding for bank loans, et cetera, through his private business adventures. So our top 2 candidates in the most powerful nation in the world, who one of these gentlemen will become the most powerful individual in the world, are up under those kind of circumstances. Now, as I was telling you off the air, Jason, if you so much got pulled over for a traffic ticket 20 years ago, if you so much was found at a club, maybe out winking at some lady, not even, and maybe it was your family member you hadn't seen in 25 years, they would kick you to the curb in 2 shakes.
Absolutely.
And now it's kind of like, I don't want to call it corruption, but let's just say, unless you're up to mischief, and maybe everything that goes on is all made up, because still no one's went to jail on the Biden side or the Trump side. So et cetera. But it doesn't matter anymore. This is an ugly statement I'm fixing to make. The only way you cannot run for president of the United States is if you're a convicted felon. And everything else you do is just fine. So it don't matter what you do as long as, I guess, you're appealing to the masses, because right now Donald Trump is the runaway favorite in the Republican side of things. And like I say, five folks last night, down to 5 candidates besides Trump. No one showed up, and he's the runaway leader. And I turned it on for about 30 minutes, and then I flipped it over to something else. It should have been Andy Griffith reruns, because that's obviously more entertaining than what was going on in the Republican debate last night. But nevertheless, I will tune in when Biden and Trump start debating, because that's going to be some good entertainment.
Absolutely.
That's funny. Hey, on to bigger and better things. Besides running the most incredible nation in the world, the Texas Rangers, world champions of professional baseball. 1961, 62 years later, Jason, after that first decade of having one winning season as the Washington Senators and moving to Arlington, Texas, and become the Texas Rangers, where we once again have on display here Turnpike Stadium, the ballpark in Arlington, as most of us know it as, our bobblehead from the 1980s. I have all my Ranger pins from over the last 13 years of 3 World Series appearances. And our Eric Nadel, I almost called him Mark Holtz because that was his sidekick for a long time. Eric Nadel microphone here, that from the radio voice of the Texas Rangers, from all that to struggling in the 70s, coming up second place several times to the Kansas City Royals, into the 80s, which I call the really, really rough years. And then into the 90s, and playing in 3 different playoffs and only winning 1 playoff series, and running into those the buzzsaw that was the New York Yankees in that dynasty. And then moving into the 2000s and what I call the really, really low years of the Tom Hicks Sports Group years, and coming up on bankruptcy and having to be the ownership of the team, having to go to a courthouse and win in essence, an election to be the new owners of the Texas Rangers in a bidding war that couldn't be decided because the bids were not coming in high enough to take care of all the liability in 2010. And thank God, Almighty above, that Ray Davis won that bidding war in 2010. Go to the World Series in 10. We go within 1 strike twice in 2011. And here we are in 2023 with the Texas Rangers, and some of us who have been suffering Texas Ranger fans since they moved to town. And of course, in those early 70s, I don't remember those days because I was too young, but I do remember into the late 70s and going to those games. Now, one of the big controversies that has been going on throughout these playoffs is the negative commentary coming from one of everybody's favorite Atlanta Brave pitchers, John Smoltz. And you listen to him and the commentary that he throws out, it seems like he covered virtually every game that the Rangers played in the playoffs, even whenever there were multiple teams still left. But if you listen to some of the things that he was saying, you would believe that we were back in 2021 when the Rangers went 60 and 102 losses, their worst season since 1973, and 24 months later, the world champions. But I remember him saying in one of the broadcasts that the Rangers could only win one way. And what he meant by that in the one way is because they have to outpower you. They have to out-hit you. They have to score more runs than you do. And I know that the team that scores more runs always wins, but he's talking about high-scoring games. Now, Mr. John Smoltz, and I don't know if he's a listener yet to our show, but I know he will be in the near future. And Jason, I'll put you in charge of making sure that happens. Here we go to game 1. Down 5-3, Jason. And millionaire boy, I call him Mr. L.A. for his Dodger ties. Corey Seager comes up and hits a 2-run shot to tie the game up. And an inning later, Adolis Garcia, with his strikeouts, comes up and hits an opposite field home run. That was a comeback win, John Smoltz. We were down in the bottom of the 9th. A comeback win. Now, I realized the next night in game 2, the old Diamondbacks put it on the Texas Rangers 9-1. Now, everybody calls that a blowout. 9-1 is a blowout. But what people forget, it was 2-1 in the 7th inning. And then things got away from us. They got away from the Texas Rangers. All right? Scratch game number 2. Now, the Diamondbacks. I mean, if you would listen to the broadcast, the Diamondbacks come in and get game 2, and now they're headed home for 3 games in the desert. You would think the Rangers didn't have no shot. Okay? Now, remember, there's only one way to win per John Smotes on the broadcast. Now the Rangers roll out in game 3 and win that game 3-1. It was 2-0 for most of the game. A close game, a pitching duel. We got a comeback win in game 1. Now we're winning a low-scoring affair in game 3. And then what do we do in game 4? Put up 5 runs in back-to-back innings and take a 10-1 lead. High-scoring Rangers. All right? And then the clincher in game 5. 2-0 for most of that game. Remember, the Rangers have no pitching. Their bullpen was a major league historic worst throughout the season. And in decisive game 5 to clinch the 2023 World Championship, the Rangers roll out there and throw out a shutout. 0 goose egg on the Arizona Diamondbacks. And remember this. Game 3, they scored 1 run, and in game 5, they scored 0. 18 innings of meaningful. Now, why was game 3 big? When you're 1-1, you want to be the one that goes up 2-1. You've got 5 chances to win 3 games, and you don't want to get to the next stop where you got to win 3 out of 4. Big game. And then in the clincher, 5-0. So take that, Major League Baseball. I know that the darling Texas Rangers is not probably exactly who you had in mind, and I know they had no interest in the Diamondbacks and the Rangers. I haven't seen the ratings, but I don't think that they were very good from what I've heard. But nevertheless, they were high for me. It was the highest rating World Series in the history of me watching baseball. So, Texas Rangers, thank you very much here on episode 73 of Money, Motivation, and Mike. Part 3 of the Texas Rangers is about winning a world championship. Now, another big feat that they had during this run, Jason, was they won 11 games on the road. 11-0 on the road. It's a feat that has never happened before, and you got to think about it. It very well could never happen again. Because first of all, you got to be a wild card, and you have to go on the road. So you got to be like the 5th or 6th seed to even make this possible, because you got to go on the road and win 2 games. You got to win both of them and wrap it up. Okay. Then after you do that, you've got to go on the road again, as the Rangers did, going from Seattle the last weekend of the season to Tampa Bay to play the Rays and win both of those, and then go to Baltimore and win the first 2 there. And they don't even play their first home game till the last and deciding game of the second round when they beat up on the Orioles at home. So not only do you have to be a wild card, but you have to be a wild card and go win, and then go somewhere else and win again to get that ball rolling. And then you have to go to the American League or National League Championship Series. Of course, the Rangers be in the American League, and go win 4 games on the road against a team that supposedly is better than you because they have home field advantage. And then the World Series. I mean, it's just incredible going out to Phoenix, Arizona, and taking the Diamondbacks on 3 back-to-back games, 3 games in a row. Your pitching's got to be strong. Your hitting's got to be strong. And most importantly, your mental attitude has got to be strong, especially after they just beat you 9-1 at home on a Saturday night. Nevertheless, the Rangers are to be commended for what they did. They did it in record style. The fashion in which they did it in is phenomenal. On and on and on and on and on. Now, one of the reasons that this is made possible is because, first of all, the Rangers have the best owner that they've ever had in the history of the franchise. And we've talked about these owners and the ownership and how they controlled things over the last 62 years. But Ray Davis coming in and not being afraid to spend money. And he has not been afraid to spend money since the day he got there. Now, some of these money situations that we spent money on didn't work out so well, such as the Sensu Shu and the Prince Fielder. He still put a lot of money out there for those guys and didn't get anything done. But those were the hot free agents on the market, and he paid for those. And going all the way back to when we went to that second World Series and was one strike away twice. The big signing there was going out and getting Adrian Beltre. And look what he did. Gets his number retired as a Texas Ranger before he's done. And also going out and obtaining Yu Darvish. You know, I don't know if you know, Jason, but when you go out and acquire these big boy international players, especially from the Japanese leagues, etc., you got to post a fee to just be able to bid on those guys. You got to win that bidding war. And it's not an auction where you sit in a room and decide how you want to go. You got to throw your dollar out there in a silent bid. And the Rangers threw a fee out there and bought Yu Darvish. It's like $52 million. $52 million just to have his rights to then get him under contract. Ray Davis had to sign off on that and give them permission to do it. So Beltre, Yu Darvish, Cole Hamels. I've already talked about Shin-Soo Choo and Prince Fielder. And also a guy that went under the radar during all that was Ian Desmond, who ended up signing for bigger money with the Kansas City Royals. And then we tried Josh Hamilton again at the later stages of his life. And then you come to this team that we have right now over the last 2 years, the 22 and the 23. And it all started with the signing of Corey Seager, Mr. LA, a huge monumental signing, number one free agent on the market, and also brought in Marcus Semien. And brought back Martin Perez, who was our only All-Star in 2022, goes out and brings in Bruce Bochy from his couch. Did you see the other day where he is the second highest paid manager? He's making $4 million a year. Well, he needs a raise. Wins his fourth World Series. Bruce Bochy brings in the coach, goes out and signs the biggest free agent this year, Jacob deGrom, and under the radar, John Gray, when healthy, nobody better. Max Scherzer at the deadline because, remember, supposedly the Rangers' best pitcher is Jacob deGrom, and he only threw 6 games this year. He's coming back. Go out the deadline, get Max Scherzer. Go out the deadline and get Jordan Montgomery, the Andrew Heaney's of the world. This guy is spending the money. Now, what's also intriguing about this situation is that the farm system is very strong. Now, you got to remember, Josh Young, third baseman, phenomenal. This guy was, in my opinion, the runaway favorite until he got hurt for Rookie of the Year. All right, you see what he did in the playoffs. You know how he finished up the season. He didn't even make the final 3 finalists for American League Rookie of the Year. Somebody's not watching the games, Jason. Mm-hmm. Somebody's not watching the games at all. Josh Young, rookie. Evan Carter, coming up late. What'd he play? 40 games total? Evan Carter, straight out of, he got some time in Round Rock, but this guy at the start of the year started in Frisco, Texas, the Frisco Rough Riders. You have another guy down there, the White Langford, that's coming up. Jack Leiter played on those Vanderbilt teams. Como Rocker played on those Vanderbilt teams. Brock Porter, right-handed pitcher. The minor leagues have some players coming on. And Ray Davis has not only invested in the big league team with $800+ million, probably committing to close to $1 billion in these free agent signings, but it's not like they went out and bought this team. Obviously, there's a lot of players that are on here, but when you go out and you can sell Corey Seager, who every year that he's been in the big leagues, he's went to the playoffs because the Los Angeles Dodgers had won their division. When you can convince him to come over here, when you have lost 102 games the previous year, you as a salesperson, Ray Davis, have done a phenomenal job. And then, of course, Marcus Semien right behind that, and on and on and on, and went out and got some used tires, if you will, and brought those in and developed them into great players, such as Gold Glover Jonah Heim behind the plate. And also the first baseman. And don't forget this, Adolis Garcia, American League Championship MVP, and probably would have been the World Series MVP if he hadn't have gotten hurt. Corey Seager, obviously a prime and fine candidate to do that, which he did. Adolis Garcia was left for dead with the St. Louis Cardinals. And we go get him, and he turns into what he is now. And he came along 4 or 5 years ago. and we stuck with him, and look what he's done to this day. And by the way, Corey Seager, we mentioned him already several times. You know, he is only the second ever position player to win the World Series MVP, and the only other one is Reggie Jackson. And I think Corey Seager is only the fifth person to win the World Series MVP, period. So big time stuff there. Now, obviously, I've talked about the team. I've talked about Ray Davis. Now, let me let you in on a little tidbit here, Jason. Ray Davis owns this team because he was able to make some deals behind the scenes as this bidding war and this bankruptcy that the Hicks Sports Group got us into back in 2010. The front runner to own this team in 2010 was none other than Mark Cuban. Mark Cuban offered $500 million and another $70 million for the parking lot. And that deal was all but wrapped up. Now, one of the things, money talks, suckers walk. One of the things about that is, at that time, Fox Sports was carrying those Ranger games. Where, right now, I believe it's Bally's. But back then, Fox Sports was carrying those Rangers games. And they, as word goes, was not real excited about Cuban owning the team, because then he would own the Rangers and the Mavericks and could come in, because of his means, to be able to do his own network, like the Cubs and the Atlanta Braves over the last 40 years have been doing, 50 years probably, that Mark Cuban can come in and do the same thing with his two ball clubs and run Fox Sports out of business, or at least out of the state. So Fox Sports did not want Cuban to have the team. At that time, Fox Sports was paying $70 million a year to broadcast Texas Ranger games. They quickly, behind the scenes, worked a deal with, and we've mentioned this before, with Chuck Greenberg, and the $70 million would immediately go to $100 million for the broadcasting rights of the Texas Rangers, and they were going to pay a couple of years in advance. And I don't know if that was 2 years or 3 years or what it was, but they were going to pay a couple of years in advance as more incentive for the Ray Davis group, which also, as you remember, was ramrodded by legendary Nolan Ryan. But they were going to allow that money to go on out to help them be able to maybe give a little bit more of a substantial bid to own the Texas Rangers. And that, in essence, a behind-the-scenes deal with Fox Sports and those guaranteed monies, allowing this group to take over basically the bidding war with the Texas Rangers and squeeze Cuban out. I mean, Cuban was the front runner up till the last hour. It was almost virtually a done deal. Now, if you also remember, Cuban also tried to buy the Chicago Cubs, I believe in 2008, 2009. He's done more of that than not, but still just owns the Dallas Mavericks. And as you know, continue to struggle around, and that's a day for another episode of why the Mavericks can't get quality free agents into this market, into the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex market. But nevertheless, thank you, Ray Davis. By the way, he is a Denison, Texas resident of where our broadcast comes from on a weekly basis, and Ray has done us well. And we'll never know, but I do not think that we would have gotten the same results if Mark Cuban had been the owner of the ball club. So, Jason, from 1961 to 1972 to the 1990s to the 2010 getting beat 4-1 in the World Series, to the 2011 World Series and being a strike away twice, and then the underdog in every series they played in the playoffs, just running the course. You go back and you think about most of the wins. I'm going to say almost all the wins. I can remember game 1 of the World Series, not so much. But they went through this with a whole lot of stress-free times. Just going out there and playing baseball, pitching and catching and hitting the ball and getting some very quality at bats in big time circumstances of a game and being able to drive in runs. They just played baseball. And if you go back and you look at the Bruce Bochy, which might be the biggest signing of the whole deal, you go back and look at the Bruce Bochy signing and what he did in San Francisco and those 3 teams that he took to a world championship. In my eyes, they were never the best team. They snuck in late in the year, but got them on a run, knew how to do the pitching staff, wasn't afraid to make changes, just like he did with moving Evan Carter up to 3-ho from the bottom of the lineup because he was on fire and hitting. And stuck with Marcus Semien, who was in a major playoff slump. And what did that guy do in Game 4 and Game 5 when Adolis Garcia went down? Semien played his best ball at the end. And that's what superstars do. That's what big money does. When you're in the 3rd and the 5th and the 7th inning of Game 112 and 86 and 114, maybe it's not that big of a deal. And you're striking out in the 1st inning and you're popping up in the 3rd. But when the money's on the line, these guys that Ray Davis cut checks to give money to, they come through and they come through in a big time way, starting at the top with Marcus Semien and Corey Seager. So congratulations to the Texas Rangers on their first ever world championship. And I think we have some good times to come. I don't know that it'll be a run like what the Houston Astros have been on for the last 6 or 8 years, but I think good times are going to be sticking around because a lot of that team is signed. And since the World Series has ended, the Rangers have already went out and signed a couple of their own guys to come back on that roster. And remember, Jacob deGrom, it's going to be like his first year on the Rangers. Pitched 6 games. It's just like you're going out and getting this huge signing. So we can only hope and pray that his injury and his Tommy John surgery will come back and be of benefit to us coming in 2024. Nevertheless, it is time to get back to the matters at hand of we got to go back and we got to get back into these 1990 Dallas Cowboys in a very soon episode. I want to watch and see what goes on with politics over the next few days. I am intrigued to start talking some Trump Biden stuff. I know that that's going to be more of the topics in 2024, but these 2 characters continue to throw us out some entertaining stuff that we have to bring to you here on Money, Motivation, and Mike. And of course, we're coming into the holidays, Jason, and we got to be thankful for Thanksgiving and what that's all about. And then one of everybody's favorite times of the year is December. That time from Thanksgiving till January 1st, it just seems like it flies by. Not a better time in the year than when Santa Claus is coming to town. So hopefully all you guys and gals out there have been naughty, not nice. We better go the other way. Hopefully you've been nice and not naughty, and things are going to be coming your way in a very blessed way as it has been for most of this year. So, Jason, for everyone who's been a part of this one, for Money, Motivation, and Mike, continue to live your life the right way.